can't.
I wish I could see the subtitles.
Yeah. I wish I'll do it sometime when we're not recording and then just post screenshots of what it looks like because it's pretty hilarious. But anyway, well, hello again, everybody. We're back for another week. This week's podcast will be brought to you by Pinterest moms and sexy baby voices.
Ew. This week's podcast is also brought to you by Social Justice and Grimalkin.
I'm your host, Madison.
And I'm your other host, Jesse James. Hot mimosa, yes, thank you.
I'm going the more boring route, and I just have green tea, but yeah.
Oh, hot coffee, I couldn't.
Do you just have a row of hot drinks next to you?
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, that sounds right. That sounds good.
I have part of my getting set up for my space over here is making sure I have at least 3 or 4 coasters next to me.
For all the different drinks that I could possibly want. I only have green tea and a little bit of leftover coffee, and that's it. No snacks today for me.
Well,
but
I have this pumpkin roll. It's like a cereal tube made in Taiwan. They're very good.
Oh. And it's pumpkin flavored?
You can see there is a slightly moist center to a very dry tube.
There is a pumpkin center. That sounds good.
These were actually introduced to me better part of a decade ago, I think, as energy bars. And so that's what I called them for a long time. But they're just like a dense, like, carb protein stick. They're good, though.
Mm-hmm. That does sound good.
They're kind of like a solid version of congee. It's a lot of, like, grains and beans and stuff.
Good. That sounds good. Would that be a good segue into answering that question from a listener?
Yeah, probably. So,
all right.
Do you want to go with our long question first?
Yeah, let's do that.
Technically, it's not that long. It just has more. This one was a direct message, so I'm not going to read it out completely. Or I guess I could.
Expose them.
Do you want to read out the full question?
Sure, I could do that. I do. It's on my phone here. Scrolling. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, well, this person actually requested an entire podcast dedicated to the subject, which we could also do at some point, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, that's no problem.
But this person is asking, how about a whole cast devoted to describing foods and drinks you find in and out of the way places or foreign markets, even experimental stuff you have made from whatever you have on hand. They really liked your description of my cucumber lime Gatorade and your hot mimosa.
Yeah.
So.
Hot mimosa is now a thing for me, so at least I can live in that for a while. And I agree, it's very good. Cucumber lime is always a good flavor, so I'm glad that those got appreciation. What do you find in foreign markets that you like a lot? Do you have a special thing you look for?
I have a list. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go with your list.
Okay. So, this is just kind of my, like, Wajimaya list, basically, because I don't live near one anymore. So every time I'm remotely close, I'll make a trip, and this is kind of my list of things that I have to get there. Otherwise,
Uh-huh.
it's gonna be expensive or not the same. So
Otherwise, shit's gonna go bad.
exactly.
Mommy needs her medicine.
Exactly. Okay, so my list starts out with any variety of like toasted seaweed snacks. Those
Mhm.
are pretty commonplace now, but I really like those. Specific to Awajimaya is the like dollar masubis that you can get.
Yeah.
Um,
To be fair,
those
those are
are
now
the
like $2 to $3, but yes, I agree.
oh dang. Yeah, still worth it. I my favorite is the salmon one. I
Yep.
also like the plum. That one's pretty good too.
Hmm.
Mm, other than that, I like pretty much anything like yuzu or lychee flavored. Those are my two favorite like fruit flavors, I think.
Those are kind of tougher to find too, so
Those
not
are pretty much like Iwajimaya specific for me at least
yeah.
because I can't there's no Asian markets here. I mean there's one, but it's pretty hole in the wall and small. So,
Okay.
yeah. Um I wrote lychee twice in my list. Oh, spicy squid jerky. I love that shit.
That yeah, squid jerky is pretty good.
Mhm. Um this isn't like uh I guess it's kind of a snack, but I like the um my family calls them gunny sacks, like the inari sushi.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that stuff's pretty good.
Yeah. And I always stock up on on the instant miso packets too, because those are just great. I love those.
Yeah, that's also like the perfect snack most of the time. Uh,
Yeah.
it makes it good. I for a while I was doing miso, like instant miso, but adding in old rice. And
Hmm.
if you like half and half it, that's a really good breakfast.
Yeah. That's I think one of my favorite things about maybe not Japanese food, but I guess Japanese culture is like their food is or like the breakfast is a lot more savory than what we
Hmm.
think of, which I love savory food. I would take like fish for breakfast over waffles pretty much any day.
Yeah, I can speak as someone who just had sushi breakfast.
I'm
That's a good way to go if you have the option.
really jealous. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
with a parent, so it ended up being free sushi breakfast, even though I had not intended that. So also
I
take
mean that it
that.
tastes even better.
Yeah, that yellow fin when it's free,
Oh,
very good.
oh. Free sushi just hits different.
Yeah, definitely. Uh,
Yeah.
is that your list? Is that your
Mm,
favorite go-tos?
those are my go-tos. Did I say like canned milk tea already?
No, but that's a good
So
addition.
that, and then I also have any kind of shrimp or like taco or octopus chips.
Hmm.
Those are always good. So you can pretty
Taco,
much always
taco with a
taco.
K.
Yes, taco
Yeah,
with a K. Um, those are always pretty good, and you can usually find any sort of generic brand of those.
yeah.
But what are your go tos?
So my like foreign market things that I really like. When I was little, it was finding European candy bars uh,
Hmm.
because there were places in the Seattle market that had Aero bars, which I don't really like milk chocolate as like its own thing. I think it's fine if it's with stuff that's good, but European chocolate, at least until recently, has been better. and they
Yeah.
made a. They still, I mean, you can get Aero bars a lot of places now, but uh, especially mint Aero bars, I really like the ones that are.
Mhm.
It's like if you could make an appetizing version of stale chocolate, where it just sort of falls apart, but it's on purpose. Um,
Yeah, those are fun. I
and
like
then
those.
not as much with my teeth needing more attention lately because I'm trying to like not really take it easy on my teeth, but I'm trying to like have sparing things that are like harder to clean just so I'm keeping like a pattern of like the most manageable mouth situation. But
Hmm.
uh, I used to really love finding like lion bars, which are another European import, and I think they have like a light like honey toffee or something in them that like I don't really eat Butterfingers and stuff like that because it's fucking like tragic for
It
your
kind of
teeth.
sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But stuff that is similar to that I do really like is often not from the US. A lot of US stuff is either the stickiest thing possible or Three Musketeer, and nobody wants a Three Musketeer. That's a garbage candy that
Yeah.
just it's a thing you can eat, and I know many people who love them, but I can't handle it. Uh,
Those are just like the weird foamy shit inside,
yeah,
right?
it's like the puffed
I don't.
nougat.
Yeah, no, that shit sucks.
Um, but in the world of uh, slightly older me, especially now that there was a Rocket Fizz in town, which I already hate those stores. They're kind of like the most garbagey version of a sweet shop.
Yeah.
And every Rocket Fizz I've been in this state is always run by like a mom or a dad and their kid. There's always a kid in there working at the Rocket Fizz, and it weirds me
Huh.
out. Uh,
That's kind of weird.
and this one was the same way, and the one in Capitol Hill is the same way. Uh, but I I really like Musubi is really high on my list. I think that should be adopted as a thing that places just do because
Yep.
you find it once in a while, but especially after visiting Hawaii and seeing how a place that handles seafood in a very like good public way does it. Coming back to Seattle, that is still more seafood centric than most cities on like the continental U.S.
Hmm.
It's a fucking sham compared to that in terms of like per capita availability of stuff like that. Like their their gas stations just have like chilled musubi. Like that is perfect for like, oh, I'm
That's
walking
all
down
I
the
ever
street.
wanted.
Oh, let me just grab this spam musubi with like sauce and
Uh,
stuff. Oh, it's $1? I'll take it. Like it it's so good. Um
that's where I want to be.
yeah. Food wise, it is on it, like if you want to talk about like things that are imports but not necessarily found in like a convenience store or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, the the thing that uh, so I went to Hawaii with my roommate. I was taken to Hawaii by my roommate in large part because I hadn't been on an actual vacation as an adult, and my roommate has the ability to do that and was very nice. And the funniest thing was watching uh, the purchase of food, and it was chicken katsu curry, which is excellent. Like at least 2 out of 3 meals the entire time we were there. It was like, oh, this place has it. I'm eating it. It's like, but you ate that this morning. Uh, but it didn't matter. And I get it. It's very good. But my personal thing that I could see being a real problem for both me and like my survivability, if it were a more common thing, is Moco Loco, which is just it's a it's almost like a take on the Japanese like Hamburg steak, where it's like a ground meat like patty essentially,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but it has like an entire bowl of rice, a whole bunch of beef gravy, fried eggs on top, and it's like
Uh,
usually seasoned with like the type of like seasoning you would expect from places that know what they're doing.
mm-hmm.
And it's so good. Like just the idea of brown gravy and rice is already like pretty appealing most of the time. But when you add like a breakfast hamburger to it, it it's so good. And like being able to
That
go
sounds
get
so
Moco
good.
Loco and coffee at like fast food places and it's just always good is nuts. Also, totally a Hawaii thing and not necessarily an import thing. A lot of baked goods in a lot of places where you don't always see them, and I appreciate that a lot. For as a fat kid living a slightly less fat adult life, more places you can put pastries, the better. I I would suggest anybody who likes that kind of fare definitely trying to go out there, as it is a place you can go with the bare minimum of travel stuff and for pretty cheap, honestly. Uh, do it if you have the chance. Also, their
Huh.
airport has your name, which is funny.
Oh, Inoue.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of Inoue there. We have a famous one there.
yeah. Uh,
I get
I
that a lot.
I'm unfamiliar with famous Inoues, but I appreciate that that's out there and did not expect it. Um,
Yeah, that guy was actually pretty cool. I don't know a whole lot about him other than I think he had like a purple heart or something. I
oh,
I knew the story once a while ago, but
the story of my last name is it's like the when I checked 20 years ago or whatever, it was either the first or second most common surname in Poland. So who the fuck knows?
yeah,
I'm just Polish Smith.
that's the same with me.
Oh yeah.
I'm Japanese. Yeah, in a way, is like Japanese Smith. There's so many in Japan.
Okay.
Or at least that's what I've been told. So if I ever go back and like try to find relatives, it's gonna be impossible.
It's funny how other
Well,
countries exist.
yeah, weird,
Um, I'm trying to think if there's
but wow.
rice candy. I
Did did I not say that? That was on my list too.
Yeah, that stereotypical ass Botan rice candy for $1. I will fucking eat the shit out of that every time.
And they
Uh,
give you stickers, so it's like a really good deal.
yeah, there's so many stickers on like bus seats from when I was younger and like random like telephone poles and shit as of like a couple months ago that are from those. I I'm always in favor of that. Uh, there's a lot of import goods that I would probably put on a list of things I like, but I think those are the ones that stand out first. Uh, Umaibo are really good. Um, I actually they're pretty much the same type of form factor as these the pumpkin rolls where they're like
Mm.
stiff like tubes, but nice. The classic ones are just basically a giant Cheeto, and it is more satisfying than eating a Cheeto, or like
Oh,
eating a handful of Cheetos feels less satisfying than just having one of those. Uh,
okay. I was wondering what that was that you posted on your story
oh
caption
yeah,
giant Cheeto. I
we
was like,
have
that's a big Cheeto.
we have a stock of those right now. They also make a ton of flavors. They have like I think the other one they had that we didn't pick up last time was like an aged cheese. But they do like themed flavors for like different dishes, and we also have some that are slightly smaller, but they're chocolate covered. So they're
Mm-hmm.
like a uncoated Cheeto texture, like a puffed Cheeto, but they have like a pretty good covering of like a chocolate on top. Uh,
That sounds
and
really
they
good.
always come individually wrapped, one per bag, and that's like a much better portioning when it comes to, I don't know, just enjoying a food. I feel like uh, because you that also means you buy a bag for like $5 and you have like fucking 40 of them, which is much better in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
longevity. We've had bags that if they were a bag of chips would have been gone like 2 days after we got them, but because they're done up in this specific way, we've had them for weeks because we're not monsters. uh, we are, but you know that's what your brain does when you see a bunch of bags of something.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so the second half of this question is uh, about experimental stuff that we make with whatever we have on hand. Uh, do you have any examples of that? You must, right?
I have like a couple. I feel like that part of the question is very much geared towards you because you're always coming up with some really good like concoctions.
Really good
Really
concoctions.
good concoctions. But my most recent and like actually successful um I don't know if this really counts as an experiment because I had a recipe to do it, but I had just never heard of it before.
Uh-huh.
Is that I made sweet potato gnocchi. That was pretty good.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
into
was
it.
really good. Those were like really satisfying and really filling because it's gnocchi. Yeah, it tasted like that sounded,
Mm-hmm.
or it. um, what else? I don't know. I don't have a lot of like experiments necessarily recently. I've made a lot of like um masubis, like spam masubi and tofu masubi
I mean,
recently.
I don't make masubi, and I'm pretty jealous of that being around.
I'm not good at it. They're very like I haven't perfected my sushi rice. Um
Okay.
so it's very crumbly and just like crumbly rice wrapped with a seaweed, which I'm fine with, but
Just
I
gotta
still no.
gotta wet it up. Are you
Yeah.
using a rice cooker for that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I did the rice cooker. The only thing I didn't have time for was like when you do sushi rice, you're supposed to rinse off the rice a couple of times to get
I
rid
was
of like
just
the.
gonna say that
Mhm.
actually helps a lot for sushi rice.
Okay, that's probably what it was then because I didn't have time to do that. But I used like rice vinegar and a little bit of sugar, so it tasted really good. It
Hmm.
tasted like good sushi rice, but I probably have to do that next time for it to be successful.
Yeah, I usually get sticky rice whenever I make it, and I up the water amount a tiny bit, but
Mm.
I just rinse it out really well and get all the like, I don't know, get all the
Rice
I
gunk.
yeah, I learned how to do it from somebody from China, and their reasoning for it was uh, affecting the glutens. I think that's probably at least close to right, so that's just
Huh.
what I go with for the reasoning. Um, but it's
Makes
good.
sense.
Uh,
Yeah.
whether it's getting rid of particulates or helping along with something, it works, so I'll do it.
Doing rice magic.
Rice magic.
Rice
Uh,
magic.
I'll definitely take any advice on rice magic from people who have uh, like countries that know how to use rice, because
Oh
this isn't one
yeah.
of.
Yeah, please send us your hot rice tips and tricks because I will definitely use them.
Yeah,
But
if you know rice recipes, send them our way.
yes, please. Oh, and if you have like a special kind of fried rice recipe that you do, ooh, send that to me too because I love fried rice and I love seeing how different people do fried rice.
Hmm.
Because my dad like does it a specific way, and that's how I do it. But I want to know the
Yeah,
world's fried rices.
there's like infinite fried rice recipes out there too. Uh,
Mm.
my favorite is I think it's like a vaguely Cajun inspired fried rice, and it's just like
Ooh.
it's almost like barely singed rice. So
Mm.
it's almost got like a char to one side of it when you're doing it, almost like a Spanish style thing. But then
Paella.
yeah, like a paella almost. But then the only ingredients I remember are uh like linguiça sausage, and you use the oils that come out of that to like grease the pan, and
Yeah.
then once you add it all in, you just like crack an egg or two into it and stop when you're ready, and it's just super good. Uh,
I'm so hungry.
um, well, so experimental stuff. Do you have any drinks or anything you want to add to that, or should I go?
um, what was it that I made? Gosh, there was something that I did make that was interesting, and I can't remember. Um, Not my experiment, but my friend's family makes like homemade Baileys
Oh,
every
okay.
Christmas. And so I have that in the fridge and it's really good. It's also very strong, but it's really good.
Yeah, that's something my dad used to do. I don't know how to do it, but that was a common practice at one point in my household.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't really know apparently, and I was very surprised to hear that. Or at least
Mhm.
her recipe does. But other than that, mm, not really. What are your experiments recently?
Uh, so I do a lot of food experimentation, like a lot of it's so-so, just because it's thematically appropriate. I was well, so I still live on a pretty tight budget, everything said and done, but I used to live on a really tight budget, and like a if I spend this $5 bill, I'm not going to be able to pay rent kind of budget for years. And the food experimentation really goes up when you're trying to do that. Uh, but one of the things that I found that I actually really liked in the end was not healthy and not something I would suggest people do regularly. Oh, I guess there's a bunch of things in that realm. Shit. All right, so there's uh, you can make donuts and bread um, using uh, flour and water, and that's it. As long as you cook it the right way, you can
Mhm.
make your own flatbread for like almost nothing, and it doesn't take very long. And I used to do that a lot more, and I might get into it again just because I am really tired of buying things for like breakfast and stuff because I make them on flatbread, and all the options I can find are like $1 per bread. And when you buy them in packs of like 6 or 10, it sucks. Like that's a lot of money to drop on the amount of bread you get, even if the amount of meals you can make with it are
Yeah.
technically not like that limited. Um, but making it myself would let me make it like once a week, and it would cost me probably $1 or $2 in total. Uh, so that's really good. I'll try and like write down the exact recipe because the weird thing about that recipe is that I made that recipe. I was baking a lot at the time, so I just uh, figured out like what amount of that stuff I needed, and then referenced like some of the Cooking Institute stuff and figured out what worked. And I'm sure other people use it for stuff, but make it better. But it is incredibly easy. So that's probably the most like successful experiment, because that was one of those where like you take this fried bread and while it's still like hot and like a little bit like greased from the pan, you just dredge it in whatever you want, and you can make donuts because it works perfectly for that. And if you make a hole in the middle when it puffs, it does kind of get a donut shape even, and it's kind of like an elephant ear almost, but a little softer. Um, and then if you just make it regularly, it puffs up and then like usually drops down again as you fully dry it. And then you can make like sandwiches just as a wrap, like a standard like pita kind of thing.
Yum. That sounds good.
And it doesn't have anything in it. It's just flour and water. So that one's simple. Some of the less good experiments and the less practical experiments, one of my friends and I were sort of doing more of than most people, and she made an actually really good drink, like a mixed drink. When what's the sparkling water? LaCroix.
Yeah.
So before LaCroix was what it is right now, and it's like flavored water that people like, she was using the like LaCroix that is just soda, like started, where it had like a different kind of yeast or something. I don't know exactly what they were doing different, but it was grapefruit LaCroix, and then I'll say a secret mix of other things that I only use this as a reference because I was a taste tester and in on the naming of it. So I feel like I didn't make it, but I feel like I got to be privy to its introduction.
Gotcha.
And that drink's called the Rusty Pelican, and it's very good.
Ooh.
And it's only like 4 ingredients, I think, but it's not an established drink, and it is a very good drink. The other thing, though, this is sort of the other direction. I ended up sort of making this thing, but it was with influence and at her house during a party where I think we were sitting or standing in the back of her apartment where the kitchen was, and people were like watching, I'm going to say probably a bad Japanese B movie, like Machine Boy or something like that. And we took some of those little round, buy them in a plastic bin brownies that are like good only because they're all edge and there's no like big goofy soft part. So one of those took some at the time it was a fairly mild guacamole, and then roll crusted it in Nerds. And it was one of those things that was like, this sounds bad, right? Like those 3 things don't work. And what we accidentally discovered was the ultimate in like horrible food on purpose. Because what you don't consider with the Nerda Guaca brownie, as it became, also, we made this again in the future, but she made like real ass good like cream cheese brownies, like homemade good brownies. I don't remember if she made the guacamole, but we had like a spicier, like much better guacamole. And then we used like I don't know, the full assortment Nerd things. and made them for people later as well after this, because of how hard they were to deal with. When you eat something like that, you have to consider that it's a brownie that's like inoffensive to most people, but it's just sort of like a lot of heft. Like a brownie is like a dense piece of cake almost.
Yeah.
The guacamole is like all like fats and like a little bit of like usually a little bit of sweetness and like a little bit of like acidity, and then the nerds are just like hard sour like acidity, and that's it. The problem is you get a big chunk of something that's kind of sweet. You get uh, the other two things on top that are like melding together, and it's ends up being, I wouldn't put nerds in guacamole either. It ends up being like the interior of a stomach, where it's like it's acid eating through fats. It's almost like it's being digested in the
Oh
way it tastes.
no.
So, and then
I
it's
hate
like
that.
also like the brownie ends up adding to it and making it like really buttery and really like substantial when you try to eat it. So it's one of my favorite food dares of like, if you can eat this, I'm impressed, but you won't be able to. Uh, I think I ate a whole one once, and then I ate like portions of them later. But it was more because you have to like eat some of it to convince somebody to try and eat it. Um, in experimentation, though, I also had a thing going at a place I worked at where we ended up also having hummus on Pop Tarts and uh, zingers. Uh, the like Hostess zingers with uh
Yeah.
with sharp white cheddar, like an Australian like crumbly cheddar on top. The zingers were okay.
Okay.
The hummus Pop Tarts were not very good. I think honestly you could probably pull off a chocolate Pop Tart just because hummus and chocolate are actually okay together. But I don't think that it worked when we did it because we did it was like wild berry or something. It was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
I don't like the way that sounds.
um, that's probably the most experimental food making. Uh, but in
The guaca chaca brownie, is that
uh,
what you called it?
the Nerda Guaca brownie, um, uh, the most recent stuff that I've been doing that I like is I've been doing more um, syrups and stuff. So like I'll make reductions and then use that to flavor drinks. Because I usually like drinks that are close to like a whiskey or a gin. Sometimes I want to like tequila more, but it's expensive and I just don't have access to tequila really. But I like starting with a alcohol and a syrup, and if I can make the syrup, that's even better because then I can sort of like anticipate the flavors and stuff.
Mm.
Um, and then I'll add like little bits of like a juice or an herb or something like that, and slowly work up to a drink. But I don't have any like notable ones. I think the hot mimosa is my favorite, and that's the most simple thing ever. It's just uh, sake, orange juice, and sage muddled into it, and hot. And that's usually what I like the most anyway. It's it's simple and it tastes good. So
I still want to try that. I haven't tried that yet. I remember you making a rosemary syrup
mhm.
for me that was really, really, really good. And we used all of that for like making drinks and stuff, and
Yeah,
that was really good.
yeah, that stuff's fun too because it's I don't know, like adding it to stuff can add quite a bit. Like you could probably put that syrup on rice and it would be good. It just is experimenting with it.
Yeah.
I have like this cinnamon blackberry syrup that I made that I like a lot too.
Ooh, yeah, that
Uh,
sounds really good.
I used that with the sake uh, originally before I did the mimosa. So I knew that like sweet things and syrups and stuff were going to be good in it before I tried this. Um, and I don't think there's anything else notable. Oh, but I didn't finish the one little bit. So the weird thing that I did before I got super off track when I was super poor that I ended up liking is I made
Hmm.
a giant musubi essentially that I could eat for a week. uh, and what I would do is I would buy like 3 cans of tuna and some rice. And like I always had herbs and stuff, but if I needed something, I would buy like dill and just go with like salt and pepper I had.
Hmm.
And I would lightly fry the tuna, like just canned shitty tuna. I would lightly fry that until it was like I don't probably being hungry while I was doing it until it was like, yeah, I would eat that. And then I would take that out and I would put it off to the side, and then I would use the oils to make rice. So I would make like a relatively large pot of rice for rice, but like you would serve a family for a night. Um, and then I would take half of the rice out when it was like done, put the tuna in it, and then put the rice on top and cover it,
Hmm.
and like sort of weird low cook it together and like press it down sometimes, and then I would just put the whole thing in the fridge and like cut into it like a pie almost and eat chunks of that for like my meals because it was enough, like it worked, but it was essentially just making a giant musubi that I could eat all week.
That sounds like a big sushi cake.
Yeah, it was a sushi cake essentially. I mean, it was a cooked fish cake, but um,
That sounds good.
it
I'd eat
worked. It was cheap, and uh, I mean, it didn't change the image of me being very poor, that's for sure. But it worked.
that. Gets the job done. I've made a couple of like um, fish cakes with canned tuna sometimes, and those are pretty okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tuna's versatile, but the mercury content can be a problem. Uh,
Yeah.
as a person who ranks seafood and like pastry as the top things in their life that they want, uh, one kills you and the other kills you. I mean, everything does eventually, but balancing those things can be tough. Also, just in the realm of cheap food, one of the cheapest things that I've ever found for like long term eating is steak.
Mm.
Because almost everywhere will sell you what are actually 4 portions of steak and 2 steaks for like $4 or $5. And I'm only mentioning that because I think it gets overlooked a lot. Uh, if you're
Yeah.
actually a poor weirdo and you like food and you want it to be like available even though you don't have money, don't let the stigma of having something like steak that sounds expensive stop you from actually using your money well, because it can be way better getting steak than like ramen that is going to make you like shitty ramen. Because I love ramen, but ramen that is like a fast food style ramen is usually
Yeah.
going to leave you hungry like 2 hours later, and that sucks.
Yeah. You have to kind of factor in the like how far or how full it will make you for how long.
Yeah, totally.
And that's why I don't like eating ramen all the time because I don't feel full afterwards.
Yeah. And if
unless
you
you drink
are
the entire broth, and then it's just like sodium, all of the sodium you could ever possibly need. So.
if you are gonna chug ramen, my suggestions are don't add nearly what the flavor packets are. Kind of in the same way that if I do get mixed drinks of coffee, I always get half at most of what they put in it.
Mhm.
Because, like, yeah, it doesn't change the effect that much, but the flavor is usually better, especially when you get used to it. And the amount of sodium in ramen packets sucks. Like, there's already
Yeah.
sodium just there. Add a little bit of it and see if you like the flavor. And if you do, don't add any more. And then,
Mhm.
like I think you said you do this too, but like if you put an egg or something in it while it cooks, it's always better and it's probably more filling. So eggs
Yeah.
are a good option if you can eat eggs for making things go a little further.
I think the my like favorite easy cheap go to make any Asian or like Japanese, I guess, kind of food elevated is just sesame oil. That's my favorite thing to just put into ramen. It
Yeah, I
instantly
haven't
makes it
used
so
that
much
much.
better.
You've said that before to me, and I want to try that. I just keep not pulling through on it.
If you get just a bottle of it, even because it's so strong, just adding like a little drop to your ramen, or I put it in fried rice too. Like I love sesame. So I think it's funny to try stuff like that, like sesame oil and rice vinegar and mirin. Like if you can kind of try these things individually, you kind of start to be able to know like if you go to a restaurant, like how they're cooking it, if you know what these things taste like by themselves. So
That's I didn't
that's okay.
realize even mostly having experience and up until like I don't know like 6 or 7 years ago of Chinese food as like American Chinese like fast food shit, um, which I love. I say shit because that's how I refer to things, not because I dislike it. I will always eat sweet and sour goop. Like it's great, but um,
Hmm.
when I finally was around people that introduced me to like actual like commonly used sauces from like China and Japan and stuff and Korea. Those sauces are amazing and also in everything. It doesn't matter if you're at a restaurant
Hmm.
or having home cooking. Those sauces make a huge difference. And
Oh yeah.
once you taste like just go to even if you're in a small town, go to the like Asians like Asian food, usually a smaller town, the sauces are all in the Asian food section too. Um, and just if you have the ability to get like some of the smaller bottles of the things that you have no idea what they are and try them, and almost guaranteed if you like Asian food, you've had those sauces and like them already. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that stuff is great, and it definitely you start learning how to cook those things just by eating them because like you realize that they're there. Uh,
Hmm.
well, this is a very hungry way to lean into this
I know, I'm
podcast.
so hungry now. I after this I really want to uh, there's nowhere here to satisfy these cravings, and I'm so sad about it. There's like our uh, catch-all Asian restaurant that sucks, and then there's one like Chinese American restaurant that's fine. I think I got food poisoning for the first time I went, but it
Oh,
was okay.
well, that's maybe not ideal.
Yeah, Evan and I were, there are two different Chinese restaurants in town, or like Chinese American. So we wanted to try them both and see which one was our new Great China, because I literally have dreams about Great China because I love
Yeah.
that restaurant so much. Like if you live in Kirkland, Washington, or in Seattle, go to Great China for me and enjoy it because the portions are fucking huge, and I think it's decently priced, and it's just good. It's just really good, and they're nice there. So
I don't know if I've been to Great China.
I think you have because I think we've talked about Great China before. I
Okay.
think I remember you telling me you got like a salt and pepper fried fish.
I totally did go to Great China. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Their salt and pepper fish was voluminous and good. I had that. I got it to go, and I had it for like 3 meals, and it was one dish. It was
Right?
really good.
They give you so much food. Like Evan and I would go um on a weeknight or something and get just their combination
Yeah.
plates and they're fucking huge. Like we would have well, Evan has no self-control, so he would on like mostly eat all of it in one sitting. But I would like portion it out, and I would have the next day's like lunch and dinner. It was like so much food.
Yeah. That's like when you find a really good teriyaki place and your whole life changes.
I know. I don't have that here. Bummer, but I like how we started out saying, we probably we'll probably just read off this list and we'll do a food cast another time, but this has turned into the food cast, which I don't mind. I was also
Only
actually
like
gonna
half a food cast.
only half of it. We could still do plenty of food casts, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Um, I was gonna mention though when you were talking about sauces, my top sauce that I have gotten,
Top
um,
sauce.
top sauce is I think it's called My Ploy.
Okay.
I think it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
a Thai. Do you know that one? It's kind of like a sweet and sour. Not really. It's kind of I don't know how to describe it. It's good with like breaded shrimp.
For
Do you
whatever
know what
reason, I always thought that it was moi poi, but that could just be
I've
me
just
trying
seen
to
it
make fun
spelled
of them.
like MAE. And so I don't know. I don't know how that's pronounced. I'm just saying it.
Okay.
Someone tell us what to do. I'm
We're not going to look it up.
not
Uh,
gonna
let's
but
see.
it's like a sweet and sour dipping sauce with the like pepper flakes in it. And that is so good. Also, how do you say it? Hoisin sauce? Hoisin? The sauce that you
Croissant?
put in
That's,
hoisin? I don't. It's like
yeah.
it. If you ever go and get pho, it's like what they give you to put in there, and that's a really good sauce too. So those are our starter sauces. Also sesame oil, get that too, and sriracha. That's not
Yeah.
really.
Sesame oil. Yeah, sriracha's a good starter. If you tried sriracha and you're like, oh, I like this sauce, then all the other sauces are open to you.
Yes.
That's your training wheel sauce to get into the rest of it. Um, all right, I am going to read through some of our questions we've gotten. Uh, this
All
probably
right.
won't take too long. Uh,
Okay.
so the questions I'm reading are questions that were received to my Instagram account at sour_buddy. Uh, and I'm just going to go through them so people have an idea of what these look like. Uh, we've got, I'm not going to read the names because a lot of them are like, we don't need to read the names on them. So we've got hi at sour_buddy smiley face. We've got, and this
Okay.
is questions for the podcast. Uh, we've got a real question here, and it's, what's it about?
The podcast.
That's all it states. What's it about?
Um, food at the moment.
Yeah. I think if somebody asked me that on the street, hey man, what's your podcast about? I think my response would probably be stuff, but mostly
Yeah.
dumb. A lot of dumb stuff. So I think
Mhm.
that's my answer for that. We've got hi at sour underscore buddy shy smiley face. We've got are pollicle dogs really as bad as they say? I think this is an important question for us to consider.
That is important. I
Uh,
think I've actually seen this question before.
so, what do you think? Are pollicle dogs as bad as they say?
Yeah, I think they're pretty bad.
Yeah.
I think they're real bad.
So,
Real bad dudes.
as best as we can tell, pollicle dogs are poor little dogs, according to T.S. Eliot. And I'm gonna say they're probably bad dogs. They're, if nothing else, they're depressed. So I'm gonna leave it with that. Well, I think we're in agreement. They are as bad as they say.
They're bad. Yep.
We've got hi at sour underscore buddy regular smiley face. We've got hi, how are you? If you want to see on my profile, follow me. Waving. So
well,
that's
do
always
you?
a good one. No, I'm good. We've got hi at sour underscore buddy smiley face.
Oh,
Hi. It's worth noting, these are all different people. I have not gotten a repeat hi on here, so I'm going to assume that that is a bot tactic.
I was not aware that was a thing that could have bots at this point. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but
I guess bot tactic, I mean more like a tactic that you would use as a bot, but also if you're just looking for follows and stuff like that.
Makes sense.
But like one or two of these are from other podcasts, so
okay.
We've got
our enemies.
I don't think so. A lot of them are like people without their shirt on, so I'm gonna say a different kind of podcast than we do.
Oh, damn.
How many knuckle sandwiches can you fit in your fat mouth?
Is that from a person that we know?
It's
or
from
is
a
that
person.
from
It's from a person that I know.
I can fit exactly one, probably.
I can fit about 35 rat hands in my mouth, and I think that that's a good enough metric. Human hands, 0. I can't fit any human hands in my mouth, unless it's a baby. We've got hi at sour underscore buddy smiley face.
Hi.
We've got hey sour underscore buddy, not an at though. So you know they're legit.
Nice.
Hey there. Hey.
Hi.
Nice feed at sour underscore buddy. Check my page too. All right, now we got a couple real ones. Well, they're all real. What is your favorite Asian food or drink?
See the previous 30 minutes of this podcast is what I would probably say.
Well, that's not the answer. What's your favorite?
My favorite? I don't even know that I could choose. Okay, favorite food? I love just salmon nigiri. That's all I ever want to eat. Like, it doesn't even have to be that good. I'll probably still eat it.
You want that rice underneath, but it's got to be salmon.
It has to be, or sashimi, but like sashimi is expensive. So even in my dream scenario, I'm like, no, gotta rein it in, keep it affordable. But yeah, probably salmon nigiri, and no specific brand comes to mind, but just like hot sake, I really like.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
In the world of alcohols, that's one of the best for sure. It's like all the things I like about beer and all the things I like about wine and all the things I like about just drinking a shot, and it's all just kind of combined into one.
Yeah. And the texture, I really like. I think the kind is called nigori, like the cloudy ones.
Oh yeah, the
Hmm.
like less clarified.
Yeah, they're like not slimy, but there's a little bit of like cool mouth feel, if I could be fancy and use that word. But
When I think about like potential places to visit or vacation or anything like that, if I were a person of means and had a job that allowed it, a place to like live for a bit, like probably a year or two at least, somewhere where there was a place that professionally made sake would be high on my list because a lot of those
yeah,
places also have like uh, little bars or cafes where you can go drink it, and having that stuff as like as perfect as they want to serve it sounds like the best way to be a lush and enjoy it, and I would be into that.
yes.
Um, I think my favorite Asian food, because I think we're in agreement on drink. I think that's the top of the list. Is just good sake is definitely
Hmm.
yeah. My favorite Asian food overall is probably tied between uh uh what's it I'm having a an episode. What is um the style of frying, like breaded frying that I'm forgetting?
Tempura.
Yeah. Tempura yam is
Oh yeah.
one of the two, and especially with like the appropriate sauce.
Hmm.
And that's probably tied with that's probably tied with just salmon sashimi. I think that's hard for me to get away from
Hmm.
because you can have that and it's always pleasant unless it's terrible, but that goes for everything. I never walk away from raw salmon and think, boy, I wish I hadn't done that. Uh,
Yeah, me neither.
Originally, I was going to try to say tempura salmon, which I do like, but it's just
I've never had that.
it's good. It takes away a little bit of the like I would rather have tempura yam and some salmon any day than have tempura salmon. It's
Hmm.
a different kind of flavor. But that's probably like being that sushi is definitely an Asian food uh, for at least most people in the U.S. I know that there are places that do raw fish other than like Asian countries, but that's definitely where I've had the most of it from.
Yeah.
So pretty similar answers, honestly.
Yeah.
um, uh, All-time favorite chicken-based food. Also, favorite name for a chicken. So
Oh.
it's sort of a name the way you want to kill your best friend kind of
Oh
question.
no. Um, a good name for a chicken. Oh my goodness, what is going on? There's some
Business.
serious like business happening in this room. Um, I'm trying to think. I'm like super drawing a blank right now on good names. I keep thinking like Charlie. That
Charlie,
would be
that's not a bad chicken name.
okay.
You
I
could
could come
call
up with
them
better.
Chicken Charlie, and that I'm sure has bad implications somewhere, but it's an appealing uh, name to push together.
I like the alliteration. Uh, as far as a meal, is this just like a chicken based meal or like a specific way that chicken is prepared?
Chicken based food. So I think
Okay.
it's anything chicken adjacent as well.
Anything chicken. All right. Well, um, I actually gonna put this out there. I don't like chicken that much.
I think
So
that's a fair stance to have, and does not give a favorite chicken.
yeah, I don't know that I have a favorite chicken. I like chicken and waffles. I really like that a lot.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure.
But as a general rule, like I don't like chicken. If I go out to a restaurant, I will probably order anything other than the chicken.
I'm so with chicken, but I like turkey less. That's sort of where I stand on it.
Really?
Yeah, I
Interesting.
think turkey is terrible most of the time, but I think turkey can be good if it is with the right stuff. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
like the reason why I say it's worse than chicken, other than the flavor, is that chicken. So my favorite chicken dish, I think, has to be fried chicken, just like Korean style, where it's the like thick, like really adhered breading.
Yeah.
And I don't want a lot of fried chicken. Like that's not a thing that I'm really gonna want to like have tons of. But if I get a fried chicken drumstick and then other food with it, I that's good, and it's really good
Mm-hmm.
like twice a year. Um,
Yeah, that's the kind of meal that I have to be in a very specific mood for. But I
yeah,
do sometimes have cravings for like, ooh, like fried chicken sounds really good right now.
like I'm the same way. So fried chicken's the top for me, but the real answer is seafood is probably my favorite chicken. um,
Yeah.
like tuna, honestly, my favorite chicken. And
Yeah.
then as far as names for a chicken, I'm gonna say the one that sticks out to me most is Rodney. We had when I had chickens with my family, we had a lot of them, and most of them didn't have names, but the roosters always have names because you have to know what to get angry at, basically. And Rodney was a Cornish game rooster, so probably about honestly about the size of my head, but with a little head and beak on top. And he was able to fly enough to get up into tall trees where we lived. And then he would just sit up there and like make noise and look at all the chickens doing stuff. Uh, he was
Cool.
pretty good. Uh, I would say in second for names for a chicken. Granted, these are both roosters, but I like the names better for them. Uh, Rodney's my favorite, but we did have a rooster that was a full size rooster named Geraldo, and I was pretty okay with that name for a rooster as well.
That's a really good rooster name or
Uh,
chicken name.
yeah, so that those
Also,
are probably my top two anyway.
I would like to formally motion that we rename our podcast "My Favorite Chicken Dish,"
uh,
or
uh,
at least this episode, "My Favorite Chicken Dish."
Oh, this episode has a title. Don't worry about that.
Oh, you got that? Okay.
Uh-huh. Um, it is something you said, but you won't know what until later tonight.
That frightens me.
And our last question is, "Hi there!" All capitals.
Oh.
Let's be friends. Double heart eyes emoji. To leave it off strong.
Is that a person? That's not a person, you know. That's
I
a
I think that might actually be a person who follows me regularly, though. So that is a human that said
all
that.
right. Okay. Well, sure. I guess. Let's do
um,
it. Let's be
keeping
friends.
keeping the trend, like we said early on, if you send us a question, we will read it. So keep sending us questions. You can send them to our email, which is
It's this week's podcast @gmail.com, all together, no periods or spaces or any junk. It's just all the same together.
And then you can always find us on Instagram at Vegeta for 2069.
Obviously.
And you can find me, and I will often post stories with a place to put questions, but you can always direct message me if you want. I'll still read it. And that's at @sour_buddy, all lowercase. And then, do you take questions on yours?
Sure, you can send questions to me. My handle is at MDSN. So Madison, no vowels, 3 times. That's it.
Yeah. So you can send those to @Madison, and that'll get through.
There's a lot of Madisons. You gotta differentiate somehow. There's too many, some might argue.
Yeah, that's fair. There's a lot of them. It's not the most popular name, but it is a popular interneting name, I feel like.
There's enough of them for the people that have the name to be annoyed by the other people that have the name.
In transitioning to one of my topics that is very brief, and since we're on the topic of Instagram and things like that, I kind of hate that the Seattle Selfie Museum exists, and I'm glad that it exists for the sole reason that I can see people's pictures show up on my feed, and I know that they paid fucking $30 to go take bad pictures in a place where everybody is taking pictures. And I hope the people who made that are doing something good with the money, because that's so much money to receive for nothing. And calling it a museum when it was a pop-up was kind of funny, but calling it a museum now that it's a permanent fixture for like 2 years is ridiculous. So I hope that they rename that.
Where is this?
It's like down by the market. It's like not in a weird place to get to. You can like walk downtown and go to it for $30, which, for reference, that is, I think, currently more than you would pay to go to the zoo or the aquarium, and the same as you would pay to go see a full show that's new and curated at the Seattle Art Museum. But you can go to the Seattle Art Museum for whatever amount of money you want, technically. So it is one of the most expensive museums in Seattle, and it is like, I want to say it's like 9 booths, and it's just like, it's stupid.
All right. I could be extremely into the idea if it was presented as kind of in the same way as what's that one that I went to on my birthday? I want to say, I'm gonna get this wrong, Infinite Kusama. Installation. If it was presented in the same way as that, where it's like you can take photos, do whatever you want, but you only get to be in the space for like 10 seconds or something, that would be interesting. So like, basically what I'm saying is that we should hijack the idea from hers to give this stupid ass bullshit any sort of meaning.
To be fair, I think that they stole a Infinite Mirror to copy Yayoi Kusama stuff. So
okay, that's the name. Yeah.
That's one of the artists that got me into doing sculpture, like when I first got into college, and that was a great show at the art museum. But that show was like right before the Selfie Museum opened, and I think that's why they did it. What I would like is for people to email the Seattle Selfie Museum and ask them how often they wash their ball pit, because they have a ball pit there, and it is probably fucking disgusting. So I would be curious about that, and also fuck those people.
They might as well call it the Spreading Coronavirus Museum.
Welcome to
Just come
Seattle
rub these
Ball
corona
Pit.
balls.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah, that kind of sucks. When you sent me the photos initially, I was kind of excited just because I like stupid bullshit like that, but I don't like that it's $30
Yeah.
and that's more expensive than any other meaningful place
It is
you
at
could really
least
go to.
as expensive as getting anybody into another place, and uh their minor fee, like if you're under 18, is $24, and most places, if you're a minor, it's like 15 at the most. So they're already taking advantage of like knowing that younger people will want to go there more and not dropping the price for that.
Yeah.
Uh, so using that like museum pricing system and all that sucks. If it were $10, I could kind of see it, because they used to have a bug museum in an area next to the market, and that was like $5 or $10 to look at a bunch of like terrariums of bugs that they had from around the world. But at
That'd
least
be
that was
cool.
a thing. At least that was a like you were seeing something that you couldn't just walk outside and do on your own.
Or walk
Uh,
into a bathroom and just take your photos there.
yeah, if nothing else, the one positive is that if people are needing, like if they have the urge and desire to take a selfie, they can go do that, as opposed to like standing on Mount Rainier and taking a selfie and like just being in space that other people are trying to be in, because a lot of like space usage on like
That's
hiking trails and
true.
stuff is pretty bound up. But I
Maybe
bet if
that's the idea.
if you did a study on that stuff, I would be surprised if that actually had an impact on that, but it could. So that's one possible positive, but only because it's important to not be too negative.
Yeah. Maybe that's the secret goal of that thing is just to get all those people in one space and just keep them there for
Yeah.
like a solid half hour or however long it takes you.
Derek spent
Keep them out of
$300 at the
everybody
selfie
else's
museum and
way.
he died. He died in the ball pit and they didn't wash it. Um,
Ball pits, no. No, no, no,
yeah.
no. I since we're like current now and topical, this wasn't something I was going to talk about, but just a general, I guess, shout out to washing your hands and
Yeah.
being clean because there's disease happening
Yeah.
and yeah,
Uh, there was a
being conscious.
safety. I have like the text from the I don't Seattle Safety Commission or whatever for King County, uh, and we have had a total of like I think five coronavirus infections in the county, and all of them are fine except one death. So that's not a great ratio. Um,
Yeah, that's not
uh,
good.
but like I guess the best thing to do here if people are interested is I've been watching like the WHO videos and stuff because I'm gonna travel in the not too distant future, just like uh like within a pretty small radius of the US, but still on a plane, so I don't want
Yeah.
to test my luck. And uh important things to remember are um, the coronavirus is transmitted through droplets. It's not transmitted through like just the air. So I think it's 6 foot radius is the safe radius of a like a sick person, generally speaking. Uh, as long as they're not like sneezing into the air and trying to like get you sick. Uh, like trying to project to people. As long as they're being a human being about it, within or without, I guess, the 6-foot radius is technically supposed to be as safe as being away from them. So that's important to remember. If you don't know what 6 feet is, it's 2-meter sticks. Like it's a distance, but it's not a huge distance. It's more important for that kind of stuff if you're like in a bus or something like that. Um, remember the things that people learned from, let's say, the Dark Ages on. If you smell something bad, that's not illness getting in you. So don't be like too oversensitive of like people being around you who are a little bit sick. Just be aware that if you can keep some distance and be generally socially polite, that's your best option.
Also, on the note of being socially polite, uh, uh, the coronavirus is not an excuse to be racist to Asian people. That's another PSA I'd like to put out there.
That's a good PSA to put out there because people are dicks. Just because the guy who happens to be presenting as Japanese is sick currently and on a bus doesn't mean you should be an asshole. If you're worried about it, treat it like you would treat a cold and sit a little further away or stand up. You're taking some responsibility for keeping yourself healthy at least. So like don't be a dick. And remember, it is droplet based for getting it transmitted to people. That doesn't mean that you're breathing it in. That means that it getting on you and getting into cuts, into like mouth, eyes, stuff like that. I think, anywhere there's a mucous membrane, so like nose, don't jam fingers into all your holes. And
damn, like that's what I love to do on all the buses. That's my favorite activity.
I've been on a lot of buses, and that is a thing that people should worry about. And the wearing a mask, if somebody is wearing a mask, that is because they're being polite, especially if they're sick. If somebody is wearing a mask and they aren't sick, like if you think wearing a mask will help you, that's not really going to help. Unless you're using it as a device to remind yourself not to touch your face. Touching your face in public is actually a bigger problem than people being sick when it comes to like preventative measures. Wash your hands and do that before you get in there and like touch up stuff.
And then, also, speaking of, go ahead.
Oh, the big thing, because this is something that our mutual work friend was saying. If you're on a plane, have hand sanitizer and keep yourself clean, because you touching yourself is usually what's going to do anything. The space that they leave between planes is usually enough to make sure that the virus is not active anywhere in a way that could infect you, but it's not a sure thing. Like, I know that most places will say treat it like a sure thing, but just use hand sanitizer and be careful. And then the big one is recycled air is not going to be able to push droplets through it and back onto you. There is nothing that is going to get you sick from the recycled air. It might make your lungs or your throat or something dry for a bit because it's recycled air, but it's not going to make you sick. So that's important to remember too on a plane.
And I just wanted to know also on the masks, there's a YouTube guy that I follow. I think his name is Dr. Mike or something, but he did a video
Yo, what up,
talking
Dr. Mike?
about he does really cool videos, but one thing he mentioned in a video he did about the coronavirus was that people are preventatively buying a lot of like the masks. And one thing he was saying is that actually, like, because of that, hospitals and doctors that actually are the people who need to be using that are having a hard time having access to them. So if you don't need one, don't buy them just because you can, because then there's less for doctors and nurses and people who are actually like ideally the first line of defense against this kind of thing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. And as somebody who uses latex gloves at home to protect myself from like different chemicals and stuff like that, uh, those gloves are great for like keeping yourself just generally like safe around certain things. They don't do anything for this. Like the again, like the mask, the only thing that it's going to do is maybe remind you not to touch your face. But if that's the case,
Mm-hmm.
just wear gloves and wash those gloves like regular ass gloves, because that's the same effect. Like the surgical gloves, while they make you feel like you're being safer, do absolutely nothing for
Yeah.
protecting you from that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Um, also, another side track, just since we're talking about um, widespread pandemic diseases,
Uh-huh.
uh, another good way to prevent this sort of thing happening is paying your employees well enough so that they can afford to take sick days, or providing them with sick days, ideally. Give them
Uh-huh.
benefits so they can do that, because people who can't afford to take off sick days are going to stay and make everybody else sick. And that's not even just about coronavirus, that's like in general.
Yeah.
If people can't go home and get better, then they're just making everyone else around that sick. That seems to make more business sense to me than just paying people shittily, but
Yeah.
that's
Um,
something we struggle with here in the United States. So
someday we'll have
something
a
to think about, I guess.
socialist utopia where people, when they're sick, don't have to try and fucking cram themselves into an office with other people.
Yeah.
Maybe, probably not. Uh, who knows? Uh, on that topic, actually, so yesterday was Friday. We're recording on Saturday. In that period of time, we have
Mm-hmm.
gotten 3 mailers from Bloomberg at this apartment, and not like
Wow. Oh
not
yeah,
like
I had.
it's not two to different names. They were all 3 to residents of different flyers. That shit
Mm-hmm.
is so obnoxious.
Yeah,
If you're at
I
all
have a friend
curious, Michael Bloomberg fucking sucks. He is a Republican, but not even a good one. And keep that in mind. If you have any question about it, if, like a lot of my family, you don't want to look at politics because it stresses you out, Bloomberg is very much somebody who is probably worse than Trump, whether he says he's
mm-hmm.
Democrat or not. And just because he
Mm-hmm.
sends out flyers that say, I care about the environment, doesn't mean shit. So don't fall for any of that if you are in the danger zone of taking those things at face value currently. Uh,
Yeah,
that sweater looks extremely comfortable.
I'm pretty comfy right now. Yeah, don't mistake repetition of seeing the same thing over and over as it being true.
Yeah.
Just because you see a face a lot, and you probably are because he's paying like boatloads of cash for ads right now. That doesn't mean it's a trustworthy face or that it's a good person. So
Uh,
do your research and don't vote for Mike Bloomberg, please. God.
as I showed you that cool video before we started, don't vote for Bloomberg.
Yeah, Jesse sent me a really cool clip of Bloomberg in the, I don't know, a while ago, having a small cameo in a play as Mary Poppins, and his big one liner was, I'm off to make the world behave. So why would you want that dude as president? Like, why? Don't do it.
I mean, if
They're
your
better off.
only issue is that you want somebody who doesn't like poor people or minorities or anything else having anything, then great. But hopefully
I mean,
hopefully if you're a Democrat, that's not you. I wouldn't identify as a Democrat, but I hope they're better than that. Ugh.
ideally.
Yeah. Oh man. I have several things that I want to talk about, but I'll do a short one because I think you should do one. Uh, I was bringing this back up with somebody just last night, so I thought I would add it into a recommendation.
Mm.
If anybody would like to listen to an album, I think it's from like 2 years ago or so, that is essentially a it's like an audio breakup letter with the United States government. That's how I would describe it.
I
Uh,
like that.
and it's like if that letter was incredibly sarcastic but very well written. um, and it's the Hopelessness album by Anoni. That's Anohni. I never remember that, but if you like it, it's got a little bit of a sound like Antony and the Johnsons. Uh, so like a little bit like wavery sing-songy, but in like a almost like a stage production-y way. But it's got good music production and the messages are very good anti-centrist like post Obama stuff. And it's a good listen. It's only like maybe a 40-minute album, so it's very easy to work into your usual listens just to try it out.
Yeah. That sounds good. That
Mhm.
sounds interesting.
Uh, did did you have
There's
a topic before I get into my extra weird deep dive?
yes. I already told you about this, but I want to share with the world um the exciting and hilarious uh content that is Pinterest moms posting their hard-boiled eggs on Pinterest.
Yeah, this
This
was
is so
weird as
funny.
shit.
It's so good, and I'll definitely be posting the photos of these on our Instagram so everyone can see. But for people who don't know, on Pinterest, there's the option to like comment and post photos of like if you tried a recipe or something, you can say I tried it, and you can like post your photo of like your try or whatever. So I was looking up tips on how to like the best way to peel hard boiled eggs, and there's so many recipes for hard boiled eggs on Pinterest, and Pinterest moms from just everywhere are posting their like hard boiled egg tries. And I don't know why this is so funny to me, but there are just like pictures upon pictures of people's just large quantities of hard boiled eggs. Some of them are peeled like really badly, some of them are peeled well, but I just think it's so funny to have like so many pictures of a lot of hard boiled eggs. It's like a lot of eggs.
Yeah, it was way more than I expected.
Some of these people are boiling like 20 eggs at a time. Seems excessive, but I'm excited about it.
Important side note, there are a lot of bad photographers out there.
Oh yeah, no, that's the best part is that they're posting pictures of these eggs, and they're first of all there's a lot of eggs, but second of all, these pictures are so bad. Like they're not going. It's just very. It's like the flash is on. We're standing in the kitchen. We have like the yellow tungsten lights happening. It's like it's just bad, but it's amazing. It's so funny to me.
Yeah,
And that was
I've
a
seen
sliver of joy I found this week.
I've seen some, but very few less appetizing pictures than what you sent me.
They don't look good. There's something just really unappealing about a lot of like 20 to 25 hard-boiled eggs
Yeah, it's like,
just sitting on
hey,
a paper towel.
have you ever seen a picture of an egg where it was almost like you could feel someone's hot breath in it? That's what those looked like to me.
Yeah, that's how. Yeah, I imagine that was taken. But
Ugh. Sorry for the egg-centric podcast. I wasn't really expecting it to go through that many iterations of egg use.
yeah, I guess we didn't really see that coming. But I'm not
Uh,
mad.
yeah, no, I would love to know more about that, and really any Pinterest deep dives you want to do, I'm now convinced are worth it, because that was real weird.
Pinterest is fucking wild, especially when you get into like the comments. It takes you off guard because it's very like Pinterest. Like it's nice. There's flowers probably, art probably. I mean, this is my own feed, but it's very like innocuous. And
Yeah.
then sometimes you get someone in the comments who's just like, "Well, fuck your eggs." It's like it's very good. I
You
like it.
know that there's some fucking white supremacist Pinterest garbage out there somewhere.
Oh, of course.
There's probably like, you deep dive into phrenology Pinterest, or it's got to be there.
Yeah, like creationist biology, Pinterest. I'm sure that that's a thing too. Evolution isn't real, Pinterest. Yeah, it's all there. I'll find some good examples.
Please come over and see my Christian identity Pinterest board.
My
Um,
Bible verses Pinterest board.
uh, uh, did you watch that video I sent you about trads, by the way?
No, I did
Okay,
not.
that might have to be for next week. That's a thing that I knew existed, but not in the form that it exists, and I got to know more about that. That's weirder than I expected and closer to incel than I expected. Uh, at least in its like weird hatred of certain people. Um, all right, so I'm gonna get into some video games here real quick, because I I had a weird week. It definitely hasn't been as insular as the sick week last week, where everybody at work and everybody that I live with was sick, so I was like in my room and that's it. But while I was in my room, I started playing a little bit more of Ni no Kuni 2, which is uh, it's a sequel to a game that was a project between Studio Ghibli and Level 5, I think. I didn't look as much into that. I didn't play very much of the first one. It was kind of a Pokemon game in a weird way.
Hmm.
Which was cool, but I didn't own it. I like borrowed it, and also it was the wrong time in terms of especially like the work I was doing to try and sit down and play a JRPG. Um, but I started playing this during the sick week, and now I'm like far enough into it to where I'm like going to finish it. It's just gonna be a slow process. Uh, but what I've realized through playing this game is that so Ghibli was heavily involved in the first one, and the second one is still involved with a lot of people from Ghibli, but like Ghibli doesn't exist in the same way that it did when the first one came out, and when this one was being produced, it seems like. So it's just a lot of like people who worked with those people, or like
Mm-hmm.
are part of that group but now are working on this, and the result is uh like a weird fan fiction slash homage of every single Studio Ghibli film that exists in this video game. Like, I think I talked about this before, the start of the game, this is not a spoiler because this is literally the opening cutscene. You're the president of the United States. Uh, you are going over a bridge towards like New York, it looks like, but it's like fantasy United States. It's definitely the United States, though. And there is an atomic explosion in the city, and it blows up your like, or it like flips the cars and like blows up part of the bridge in your what is it, cavalcade, like when you're in a group of cars together. Uh,
Yeah.
and then it zooms in on a busted up, like windows smashed out presidential limousine, and I think it's like the president's hand comes out and like, um, and then the president de-ages and goes into a fantasy world, and that's how the
Oh.
game starts. So
Oh,
you
good.
start the game playing as the president of the United States current day, not a real president, but the president, uh, and you're in like kind of the world of the Cat Returns, if you've seen that movie, where it's like cat people, uh, and they're in the middle of being overthrown by the rat people, but in their own kingdom, or like mouse people. But it's a very like, there's some sort of social commentary there, but in the sort of Ghibli way, it's like it's just off enough to where it's not like, hey, you capitalist, fuck you, but it's not too far off. And then
Yeah.
the game kind of starts from there, and uh every like the homage to Nazca is in there right away. Like the whole world's even called like Nazca, which is an odd like pull. Um, you meet like Castle in the Sky pirates as like one of the first set of people you meet, and they're like in your group. Uh, Also, the president starts with a like 9mm as his weapon, so
Mm.
that's super weird. It's a very fantasy centric game for the president to just show up with a gat. uh, the the first place that you really have a lot of interaction with is a like weird version of China, kind of, but like just a town that's run by a pug that is also a bishop. So there's that.
Okay.
Uh, like, I guess the main thing though is while I was playing this, and while it was this weird like every Ghibli thing mashed into one, like it's literally like every major level you go to is a different movie, but not quite. And like I just beat an area that was like a Ponyo area where you're like talking to mer people and there's like mer politics in play, uh, and the it's even having to do with like the dissolution of like the magic of the ocean, which is like part of this weird kids movie plot in Ponyo as well. There's an area that's very like Pompoko-y in a weird way. It's just everything. So playing that, I'm not going to spoil anything about that past like the little bits that I've mentioned. It's got a lot of story. It's got a lot of like very well done animation in the way that you would want from like a Ghibli-esque thing. So, um, what I started looking into is like sort of the legacy of that stuff, because I realized while I was playing it that some of the first stuff I was ever exposed to and remembered was that stuff too. So, um, just in case people don't know, Studio Ghibli stuff used to come out in the US before any association with things like Disney and stuff like that. And the second movie I ever internalized, the first movie I ever watched and remembered was Dumbo when I was like 3. Um, But the second movie that was like rented like in that same week was Warriors of the Wind, which is Nazca of the Valley of the Wind, that was released again way later, like in the like late 90s, I think. But it originally released in 1985, so it was out like before I was born. Um, and that that movie, I didn't realize it, but like my taste is still kind of the same when it comes to some of that stuff, and that got me thinking about how like this video game is all of these things made by a lot of those people that have been my entire life of media, like waiting for the next thing they do to come out. Um, and then so I was looking at who made this game, and all the music is done by Joe Hisashi, who's like most of those movies have his soundtracks, which is already good. And if you know his work, you probably know what that game sounds like. But the other thing is the writer from Level 5 uh, ended up doing a really good job in that game as well. And that writer has been writing since it looks like before the Dark Cloud series, which is like I want to say the first one came out in like 2000-ish or before, maybe. That might even be like a 98 era thing of like I think it was a boy and a girl who make machines, and that's like a video game for like the PlayStation or something. Um,
Hmm.
but that writer, Akihiro Hino, has like done the Dark Cloud series, a Gundam series for TV, Yokai Watch, Professor Layton, Dragon Quest, like all of that stuff. So if you are familiar with those things and like their writing, that's also sort of what this game is. Um, but before Ghibli was Ghibli, now that it's not really like Ghibli exists and they have the Ghibli Museum and all that stuff in Japan, but it it's not really that as of the last few years. There's like a lot of artists that kind of like exploded out and do other stuff. It's almost like when Disney split from being old racist Disney to being like newer racist Disney, where they have like a bunch of offshoot artists that went out and started making their own stuff. That's kind of where Ghibli's at. I don't think they're racist. I just wanted to
Okay.
make people remember that, you know, Disney did make Song of the South and a bunch of other shit. So they
Mm.
also they also copied. I think it was Toei that put out Kimba to make The Lion King, uh, and that was even more ridiculous when I started looking into it. And so there's a offshoot of Toei Animation called Topcraft from like the 80s, I guess. And Topcraft did almost all of the animation work for Rankin and Bass. And Rankin and Bass made The Last Unicorn. They made all of the Christmas specials, like Rudolph, all the claymation ones. They made The Hobbit, the one that has like rotoscoping and like all of the music originally. All of that stuff was made by an offshoot of Toei Animation in Japan, and then Rankin and Bass like voiced and produced and did work on that stuff. So even the like non-Disney animation that's super popular from before we were born was done by this same group of people, which I thought
Huh.
was super weird. Like I knew that Rankin and Bass was involved, but I didn't know that it was literally done in Tokyo and then brought over here for all these
Yeah.
like Americana Christmas movies and like popular like pot smoker movies and all that kind of stuff was all actually from Japan as well. Um, so I think that's all I really need to say about it. But my conclusion was just this video game made me realize that every cartoon movie that our parents watched was also done by these people. Uh, maybe the
Wow.
most easily referenceable one besides Rudolph is the heat miser, cold miser, and uh, the the snowman that comes to life. Frosty. There we go.
Yeah.
The Frosty the Snowman movie was also done by them. So like
Oh.
so
Oh.
like their stuff has been voiced by like Leonard Nimoy and all of these like popular old American TV actors and all kinds of stuff. Uh, which is a good time to reference the original version, the original release of Totoro in the US in like 1984 or something, is by far the best English voicing as well.
Hmm.
The version they did later with like, I think it was like some Disney like live action people. Um, I can't remember. It's a actress and her sister that everybody knows the names of, but me right now.
Is it
They did
Mary Kate and Ashley?
no. It's an older and a younger sister. Anyway, um, they did the voices for the girls in Totoro, and their acting is fine, but every other aspect of that, including the noises Totoro makes, are so much better in that old one. Um,
I think we just recently watched the new one, and I did find it
it's
not.
fine.
Yeah, I. It's not my favorite Ghibli movie, but I liked
Yeah,
it okay. But I didn't like the noises that he
yeah.
makes.
The old version made like it was like weird man noises from
Oh,
Japan. It was great. Uh, like the part where he like growls, and I think it sounds like sort of a bear. Uh,
yeah.
in the old dub, he goes, ah! It's like it's very good. And it honestly
I
it fits
like
the
that.
character better. But yeah,
Uh,
if you're not into Ghibli, sorry about that last 10 minutes. But if you are into Ghibli, uh,
You're welcome.
yeah, it's nice to know about that stuff, and you should play that game. It's good. It's long as shit though. I'm
Oh,
over the like year and a half I've owned that game. I think I'm like 35 hours in, and I'm like starting to get to a point where they're like we might be like halfway through. So I think I read somewhere it's like 120 hours if you play everything
wow,
in it. Um,
that's a lot. That's a lot of hours.
ta-da!
You did it. We learned so much about Ghibli.
Oh, and a
That's
side
really
note,
interesting.
there will be more Pop Secret in the future. I just need a good time to get that stuff together.
Okay.
Uh, said Pops has seen our podcasting now that it's up to date.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah,
Is he excited?
yeah he
Does he
seems to like it.
like it? Yay.
But maybe this will knock a couple more stories loose because I've still got a decent amount, but like the last time I was there, I got another new one, so there's definitely more in there. Um,
Good. Good, good. We could always use more pop secrets.
mhm.
I don't have the thing to do it right.
Yeah, you don't have a binder clip, you can't do it.
I can't. I can't do it.
Uh, do you have any more topics?
My my final topic is sexy baby voices.
God, I forgot about that, and I already hate that that's coming back.
Does it make it better to know that it is in reference to Love is Blind? The
I mean,
show that
maybe.
I Okay, well, the show is almost over. They did the final episode where like people either get married or they don't. So like
Okay.
that's come to an end. Pretty much
What's
everything went as I
what's the
expected.
married ratio to don't?
Oh,
No spoilers. I just want to know the general feel. Am I going to
the
see breakups or marriages?
there are both. I think
Okay.
it's the majority breakups, but I think there are a couple of marriages. And actually, I learned reading about this show that there are people who got engaged in like the pods who aren't in the show.
Oh,
So I
okay.
don't know what happened with those people, but I guess they just weren't TV worthy.
They're
So
probably dead.
probably. Or maybe on their honeymoon, or their second weird honeymoon. I don't know. Hopefully it went well. Probably not.
Maybe
But
maybe a regular relationship. Whatever
yeah,
the fuck
maybe
that
do
is.
that. Yeah, maybe do that. Uh, over the last week, I saw a lot of other people complaining about what I was complaining about initially with the purpose of the show being defeated by the fact that everybody on the show is hot and like a
Right,
model.
yeah.
So that felt good to see other people complain about that. But anyway, the show's over. But one thing they talked about that I saw a lot of articles about this week was there is one woman, and I think I talked about her a little bit last week, but there's a couple, Jessica and Mark. And Jessica, I did not realize this until it was pointed out. Jessica does this thing where she uh, um, puts on kind of like a weird, sexy baby voice when she talks to men. And it's very jarring. Like I didn't notice it watching the show, but like I watched over some clips that had been pulled, and it goes from her in like a talking head confessional sort of shot, talking normally, with like normal voice tones, and then it cuts to her in the pod, and she talks like this, and it's really terrible. It's really grating and bad, and she goes really high. And it's not like baby talk, like bad pronunciation, but it's just like
I
kind
would
of
almost
higher
respect
like
that
this.
more.
Yeah, it's pretty obnoxious. Once it
uh,
was pointed out to me, I couldn't unhear it. And she does it every time she talks to guys. She's like, with every time she talks to the women, it's fine, it's all normal. But every time she's like talking to a dude, it's always like I hate it. It's real bad.
ah, like that just
But
reminds like a thing that my friends do to their significant others to make them pissed off. Like
yeah,
I'm sure that it works for some dudes, especially if all these people are attracted.
clearly almost two.
I think honestly, being attractive is a key component to that because if you are attractive enough, you can just do whatever. Like
That's very
socially,
true.
you can like shit in your pants, and somebody will be like, "I mean, that's fine, I guess." um,
Fine.
yeah, ugh.
Shout out to Kent State Gun Girl, I guess.
What?
Do you know the? Do you remember? Oh, I forget. You're not really on Twitter that much, are you?
Oh,
Um, it's stupid and really
wait.
not worth the breath talking about it. The
Do
Gun
you mean
Girl. Do you?
do you mean the girl who walked around with a gun at Kent State? Is that
Yes.
okay? No, I know about her, but I know it through weird channels on like my anti Alex Jones, anti uh, fuckers on the like weird conspiracy right stuff.
Right.
I learned about that mostly through stuff that was negative about it, but I did eventually go watch that, and it's yeah.
It's great. Yeah, not recently. I feel like this is probably a few months ago. It's somebody spread a rumor. I did not see any basis for this at all, and now I think it's just kind of a meme. But somebody spread the rumor that she shit her pants at a party, and so everybody now, like because she's on like a speaking tour across the country now. That's, I
Ah,
guess, her path in life, going to colleges with her AK-47 or whatever. Like, I'm the gun girl. People show up to
Eh.
her. People show up to her engagements now with like packages of diapers and stuff to clown on her. So
I mean, that's not the worst thing I've heard, but it's definitely stupid.
it's pretty stupid. Like I said, probably not worth the time, but gotta let you in on all the ups and downs of the life of Kent State gun girl.
Um, let's see. There is I'm trying to remember my yeah. So um, if I'm right, the person who did that is named Millie Weaver.
I don't know
Uh,
her name.
yeah, I think that her name is Millie Weaver, and the reason why I was looking that up is because her name that she goes under to do that stuff is Rainbow Snatch. Uh, and I can't ever forget that because it's such a stupid fucking name for a right winger. Uh, but yeah, I believe that's all her. She's also like super young, so I'm sure that if she ever comes to the conclusion that what she did was not cool, uh, that'll be fun to deal with. Um, who knows if that'll happen, but uh, yeah, that's fun. That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. The Love Is Blind is pretty much over, and next week I think their final episode is going to be like a sit down and talk about your feelings kind of thing in a group. Like everyone's going to be like, I didn't
Okay.
get married, but
So less of a testimonial and more of a wrap up episode.
yeah, yeah, I think it's going to be like, what do you think went wrong, or like, why did you actually go through with this? That seems just as asinine as not going through with it. But
I
actually, I would say not going through with it would have been the smart choice.
I want to say they used to do that as a special after the last episode of The Bachelor. I think that's a thing where they'd like all
Yeah.
sit together and talk about all the dumb shit they did for the last like 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
a reality TV show thing.
yeah. Well, it's an easy thing to do because it's always uh, like filmed right before it releases or after it started releasing, so they're like months past where they were when the show ended. Um,
Yeah, that was one thing that was super frustrating is that all of these people are, or not all of them, but a lot of these people are like now kind of Instagram famous and they have a bunch of
right.
followers and stuff. Especially that one girl, Giannina Milady Gibelli. She's like it. Her career is Instagram stuff. So, uh, but I found that their Instagrams like last week and was just looking to see if I could find any spoilers. But no, they weren't allowed to say anything about what happens
I'm
until
gonna
it was revealed.
I'm gonna change my middle name to Milady for sure.
I mean, you should if that's an option. Yeah, her middle name was Milady. Her mom's name was Milady, so her middle name was after her mom. But
Yikes!
if you see this woman and like just see her B,
Uh,
it works for her. It's fine. Like she's a Milady.
all right.
Yeah. I'm kind of confused as to how like they came about those names or chose those names because they're Venezuelan. So I'm
Oh,
like, I wonder why you landed on this one thing.
maybe like if they're Venezuelan, maybe it is just a cultural thing that
Maybe
we
I
don't know.
would love to know. Oh, I need to text the one Venezuelan person I know and be like, help, tell me now. Is this a thing?
Do you know any Miladies?
Do you know any Miladies?
um, so I have one last thing that is just sort of so yesterday I was incredibly tired, but we have like an established Friday thing. So I was coming home uh, and kind of anxious to like find a way to be as non involved as possible, but still not be like rude and like just go to sleep. Uh,
Yeah.
Instead, I got a text that I saw as soon as I walked in the door, saying that there was an extra ticket uh, at a thing that I didn't even realize was happening, and it was in like an hour and a half. Uh, and so I ended up doing that because it was a cool thing that I had not. It was also the last chance to do it for quite a while, it sounds like. So it was at the Northwest Film Forum, which is a like tiny theater that does like a lot of like different events and like smaller film festivals usually. Its main auditorium is, or it's, I think it's the smaller of the two auditoriums. I've only ever been in auditorium one, but I think they have several. But it's a very small building overall, and that auditorium one is like the size of uh, like a car repair garage, um, with like the like standard raised seating for a theater, but like probably only like 120 seats at the most.
Mm.
Um, and uh, maybe like 200. It's yeah, it might be closer to that. It's not a ton. But they were showing. Let me get the name so I'm saying it correctly for sure. Uh, they were showing Keepers of the Dream, Seattle Women Black Panthers, uh, and it's, I don't know, like the Seattle chapter of the Black Panthers is something that I have very little knowledge on prior to last night, and where I went to school was kind of like where they operated, but you know, a decade or so later, I like 2 decades later. Um, and so I'd always been interested, but there's such a like negative campaign like ongoing of like, well, you know, they were bad people though, right? Like it's that thing that you get whenever you mention uh like
Mm-hmm.
communist philosophy, and people are like, well, I don't agree with dictators, and it's like, okay, sure, that's not what I'm talking about though. uh that that happened to me today with a family member who I think is a really intelligent person who just doesn't want to deal with like politics and stress themselves out, which I get, but it is a bummer how much like sort of propaganda, even though it's very light and it's very hard to notice sometimes, but propaganda is very prevalent still, and much easier now that we have so many different ways to contact people. And you
Yeah.
know, let's say you get 3 flyers in 2 days about how amazing somebody is. It's not going to change your mind if you have your mindset, but it might if you don't. Um, anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so just as a thing that I want to get out of the way, this was produced by Patricia Boyko and Tawan Labie. Um, Patricia Boyko works at a clinic that is sort of historically involved with uh, deceased member, like a woman who was involved with the Black Panthers, like it's named after her. Um, and then Tawan Labie, uh, I hadn't heard of him before, but he seems like he's the stereotype of a sort of anxious but passionate artist trying to make a story that he can relate to people out of things that he cares about. So I immediately liked him quite a bit. And Patricia Boyko seems great too. Like she's clearly passionate about what she's doing. And then the assistant director is Malika Lee. I don't think we got to meet her or anything, but the other two were there. And let's see, cinematography by Omar Wiley and Camaria Daniels. Uh, we didn't meet them either. I forget his name, but they did have like um, a very timid graphic design guy who was there, who they just kind of pointed out in the audience, and he was like, "Hey," uh, that was pretty funny. And the documentary was 5 miniature documentaries, like probably 15 minutes a piece, um, about 5 women who were involved with the Black Panthers in some way, uh, and sort of using their stories to round out what the Black Panthers were in Seattle, why they were important, especially like uh, a lot of people who are going to see this, I think, are not going to know much of anything about the Black Panthers. So it was nice to see that. Even just having
Yeah.
it talk about the 10 tenets of the Black Panthers and seeing, oh, right, that's some really reasonable shit. Like, there's nothing about it that's violent or like outwardly aggressive, even. It's just like, it may as well be a like 10 commandments of socialism. Like, it's incredibly frustrating how demonized that stuff got. And ultimately, there was a question segment at the end that wasn't super like interacted with, but like a handful of people asked some questions that I wanted to hear answers to. I was actually pretty emotional, so I wasn't gonna ask questions because I'd probably sound like an asshole. Uh, but they were also talking about like sort of where I grew up, so it affected me in a way I wasn't really expecting, and then it was even more so when uh, like a handful of the Black Panthers were there who were originally like Black Panthers in the late '60s, um, and it's I don't know that whole like cultural movement along with things. I don't want to equate them because like it's unfair to say things are like things without being like a real researcher of it and not just like a general researcher of it like I am. But uh, it did make me think of like how the weathermen are sort of treated. The weathermen being a group that was listed as terrorists from also like the mid '60s to mid '70s, I think. Uh, and their whole thing, I think they were mostly white people, but they were like they were trying to bring attention to inequality in our government, and one of the things they did to do that was set off small explosions at public buildings while they were empty. And of course, that is one of the easiest things in the world to demonize because you're still using violent means on empty spaces. So all somebody has to say is, well, but I heard a security guard got hurt and shit like that. And all of a sudden it's like, well, it doesn't matter if it's hearsay. Those are terrible people now. But like for reference, one of the guys who, as far as I'm aware, isn't necessarily a close friend or anything, but was an advisor at certain points to Sanders while he was like starting his career and stuff, is the guy who led the Weathermen. And I've heard him talk on a couple different like radio things in the past that were from the past. Like I think that he was doing that in like the late '90s, early thousands after he got out of jail for being put in jail for those things. And um, maybe the closest I've heard in reality to what socialism should actually be aiming for, even though I agree more with Bernie than anybody else who's running for president. Uh, it's still not that far into like what socialist and communist philosophy is trying to push as like a real way to treat people as equals, which is essentially not having capitalism run everything. Uh, that is who that guy is, and uh, even if I don't agree with all of the methods, I definitely agree with the points and passion of it. So taking in that I already am okay with those things and not against like having public displays that aren't designed to hurt people but designed to like make people at least pay some attention to you.
Mm-hmm.
The Black Panthers has always been something that I wanted to know more about because it feels like that for sure, but didn't know that much about besides like the Oakland chapter stuff because that was where it was centered. Uh, like for example, I know I've heard plenty about how the Oakland chapter was like turning into this weird, aggressively like misogynist thing, and that's part of how they were like pointed out as like, no, these are bad guys. They're like telling their women that they have to be their women. Like it was that kind of shit. But the thing I didn't know is that while that is not inaccurate, like that shit was happening. The Seattle chapter broke ties with the Oakland chapter because they were doing that, and then ended up being like the second most prominent group of Black Panthers in the US. So stuff like that is super interesting because I didn't realize that the
Yeah.
movement was that strong here. Also didn't realize that Seattle in the 60s and 70s had maps of where black people were allowed and shit like that. Also didn't realize that Safeway, I think it's a chain starting in California, but it's like the West Coast.
Yeah.
Uh, they were segregated and fully did not hire black people until like the mid 70s or so. Uh, like that's fucked up.
Wow.
Um, like
Wow.
a lot of stuff that I wish people were more willing to listen to people who had those life experiences and honestly just black people in general talk about the reality of their existence so that
Mm-hmm.
this wasn't stuff that I had to learn as a like person in my 30s about the world that I live in,
Yeah.
especially the neighborhood that I lived in. Yeah, it's pretty nuts, but totally like unsurprising, unfortunately. Also, their dislike of cops, I fucking love it. Uh, some of the funniest shit I've
I
ever
would like
heard
that too.
was them talking about like the police. There's a statue in the Central District that's not like a prominent one, but it's a panther with a pig like coming out of the bushes and like looking at it like from the side. And one of the ladies in her segment was just like, "This is how the fucking police were. We called them pigs for a reason. They weren't like checking in on us. Like, it was yeah, it was
I like
something
that.
that I didn't expect to see. I especially didn't expect to see it with some of the Black Panthers. Like that was kind of awesome. Uh, Also, like you want an instant like humanizing factor and stuff like that. Like just go to a place where you can like meet those people because they were not only very friendly but extremely reasonable, and hearing people explain their own philosophy and agreeing with all of it, uh, well, the Oakland chapter stuff towards the end, like turning misogynist, kind of pissed me off because that ruined something that ultimately should have been great down there. But it only makes the Seattle chapter seem better that that's what made them think, well, fuck that, we're going to be our own thing. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, the name of that is Keepers of the Dream, Seattle Women's Black Panthers. Uh, I would try to see that if at all possible, if it's somewhere you can see it or if it shows up online. Just, it's not long. It's like, I think it was about like 80, 85 minutes, but it's totally worth seeing. And Sassy Black does the soundtrack for it, who's like a local Seattle artist. And that was also cool, just having it be extra local. I feel like that stuff happens, but whenever it happens and it's like something you can really appreciate, it's pretty dope. Uh, anyway,
Yeah, that's cool.
that's my big non-food podcast plug. There was a lot of really grim stuff that they talk about, but it's better to watch it in the movie if you have the chance, because it is affecting, but it's not really my story for that stuff. I just liked it a lot.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
scene.
And we did it. We talked about, gosh, we did so much today. A lot of food stuff and Ghibli stuff and politics and even the coronavirus. We really covered it all.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
Well, Bazinga.
I guess.